on the phone from the progressive Matt Rothschild, talking about this report that has been put out by DBA Press and the Center for Media Democracy, Dissent or Terror, how the nation's counterterrorism apparatus, in partnership with corporate America, turned on Occupy Wall Street. Matthew, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Sam.
All right, so let's talk about this. I mean, I think the important thing, the thing that I find so intriguing about this story, because we have known that there was extensive spying on the Occupy movement by the so-called fusion centers, and this report is coming on the heels of reporting by Michael Isikoff for NBC News that the Boston Police Counterintelligence Unit, which is funded with millions of dollars of Homeland Security grants and works within one of these fusion centers, spent an inordinate amount of time tracking Occupy Boston at the very time the FBI was getting warnings about one of the Boston Marathon bombers. And it's this story does not make a direct, say there's an explicit cause and effect here, that all the time that the Boston counter-terror was involved in examining Occupy basically led them to basically drop the ball when it came to this Boston Marathon bomber. But there's certainly an implication there. And this story sort of, though not necessarily related, sort of has the same theme, yes?
Yeah, well, it certainly raises the question as to why Homeland Security, the fusion centers, local law enforcement were so obsessed with Occupy activists who were simply exercising their First Amendment rights, and why they weren't more interested in the actual leads from real live terrorists who were threatening the United States. I mean, I think it's outrageous the amount of money and time and resources spent on spying on, infiltrating, tracking on social media websites and Facebook and things like that Homeland Security and these fusion center officers were doing, instead of going after people who actually wanted to do us harm. And that's part of what's coming out of these documents from the Center for Media and Democracy and DBA Press, and also the Progressive Magazine. We have a cover story on this very same subject. It's really skewed priorities on the part of law enforcement and Homeland Security, for one thing, to leave the Tsarnaevs alone and track the Occupy terrorists. That's crazy. And the other thing is, in connection with this IRS scandal, we have all the right-wingers complaining about this IRS scandal. To me, this is a bigger scandal than that, and it deals with the same thing: political meddling and governmental overreach.
Right, and I would say that the analogy is, I mean, it's so much worse. The analogy almost doesn't work. I mean, here you have a situation where you have groups that are supposedly applying for, I should say, groups that are applying for a special exempt status from the IRS, and the IRS is basically very sloppily trying to determine who is and who is not eligible for that status. And in this instance, you actually have a case of targeting based upon political speech. So let's talk about what it is that you focused on from this report. It's obviously very expansive. I imagine you guys are still going through this, but what is it that you focused on in particular?
Well, I focused on one area, Arizona, and one city in particular, Phoenix, just because I think it's a microcosm of what law enforcement and Homeland Security and these fusion centers are doing all over the country. So what they did there is they treated Occupy activists as potential terrorists. They had their terrorism liaison officers at the Fusion Center in Arizona. They were obsessed with the Occupy protesters. So they infiltrated the Occupy meetings. They sent someone in undercover with a fake name. They tracked the Occupy activists online. They even kept an eye on the Reverend Jesse Jackson when he was visiting an Occupy protest in Phoenix, and recorded his movements and when he was going to be where. And then they monitored protests against ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. And And on top of all that, they were working hand in glove with some of the very financial institutions that ALEC and Occupy were protesting against, warning them, the banks when the protests are supposed to happen, where they're supposed to happen, how they could work together with the security officers from even J.P. Morgan Chase, when Jamie Dimon was coming to Phoenix, the Phoenix law enforcement was working with them. I mean, it's kind of ludicrous that they're working with financial institutions and warning them about protests when people should be able to protest, and the protesters are protesting against these financial interests that collapsed Wall Street and all that. So that's a whole nother angle on this, why they work hand in glove with big business, and it relates to another story that I've been working on over the last few years, which is the FBI working hand in glove with some 50,000 business people around the country in a group called InfraGard in every state of the union. You've got the FBI working with the private sector and telling people that, if they see anything suspicious, please give them a holler, or if they have a problem with an employee, please give the FBI a holler. So there's all sorts of things that this new study coming out of the Center for Media and Democracy relate to. But the main thing is this is ridiculous use of resources. It used to be illegal before the Patriot Act for law enforcement to go undercover at a protest meeting unless there was some predicate of illegality going on, which there wasn't in Phoenix and there hasn't been in other places. So, the Occupy movement was a threat against corporate America, and so you had law enforcement and Homeland Security responding as though it was a threat to the security of the United States.
So now, how granular, because this is important, because ultimately I want to know exactly what type of information is being shared here, because this is, this is so disturbing on multiple fronts. I mean, we've been aware of the spying that took place on Occupy for some time. I mean, this really, and this new information basically tells us just how granular that spying was. But what's also disturbing, I think, and really what's amazing is that this is basically our tax dollars funding the corporate intel of these major corporations, and one has to wonder at one point, where does it end, and why are we spending all this money? So let's just start with just how granular the spying went, because it went down to the level of facial recognition being used on people's Facebook pictures.
Yeah, I mean, that's about as granular as you can get. So there was one police officer at the Phoenix Police Department who was also part of the Fusion Center there, whose primary responsibility for months and months was to follow Occupy activists on the web and on Facebook. And then she would collect reams of material, the names, addresses, social security numbers, physical descriptions, driver's licenses, and home addresses of citizens in the Phoenix area who'd been arrested, issued citations, and this is the even worse part, or even just given warnings by police in connection with their involvement with Occupy Phoenix. If you're just given a warning by police, you're in the system. And also, she had some citizen call up and say there's this Occupy activist who's making vague threats, and the person who was talking about that Occupy activist said, well, this person is also smoking dope, and I can get you a picture of this person. And so the person sent a picture to this undercover, not to this person who was tracking the Occupy activist, and then the police officer said, well, we can use facial recognition and run this photo through our system and find out who this person was. So that's one bit of granular, scary stuff. Another one was, and this is even scarier to me, a citizen in Phoenix complained in an email to the Phoenix Police Department that they're spending too much time paying attention and tracking and meddling with Occupy Phoenix, and they should leave them alone. Well, within minutes of getting that email in the Phoenix Police Department, they did a search on who this guy was and why he's bothering them. He was simply telling them to leave people alone and let them exercise their First Amendment rights.
And so now, these fusion centers and this officer from the Phoenix Police Department, they're collecting all this data on people who they believe are going to protest in the future. They believe have protest in the past. They're gathering all this information on protesters, on people who are going out exercising their First Amendment right, and then they're basically passing this on to private corporations.
Exactly. So if there was a protest at one of the main banks in downtown Phoenix, and they would contact the security officers for that Phoenix bank and say there's a protest coming at such and such a time, and they even put together a face list of potential activists who would be there, people whose names and pictures they'd collected in their system, and shared those names and faces with the people doing security for the bank.
And so, this is really stunning now. So these banks, these corporations in Phoenix, they have how much information is shared? In other words, do they have the names of these people? They have the pictures of these people. Do they have their social security numbers? Do they have their backgrounds? Do they know who their parents are? How much information do these banks or these corporations have?
Well, according to the documents from the Center for Media and Democracy and DBA Press, they were sharing reams of information with private companies, including, yes, names, faces. I believe they shared even other material and specifics on each individual that they thought might be appearing at the protest in Phoenix at such and such a bank. And so that gives you a sense as to how close we have law enforcement and Homeland Security working with the private sector here to get in the way of people's exercise of their First Amendment rights.
And frankly, once this information is in the hands of these corporations, we have no idea how they're going to use this information.
Right. They could hire private detectives. They could do all sorts of actions, private actions to harass Occupy activists. And, I remember a young Occupy activist in New York who was taking a prominent role there at the beginning, and then about a month later she called me and said, she thought she was being spied on by the FBI or Homeland Security. And, I didn't know what to make of it at the time, but the more I read this stuff, the more I believe it.
And so what is the statutory limits on this? Is this a violation of any laws? It's one thing, particularly in this day and age, that these fusion centers, which clearly are, another example of and I keep using this word, but of self-licking ice cream cones, where they must create threats to justify the billions of dollars that are being poured into these centers. But what is the law in terms of what they're allowed to share with private entities?
I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know what the answer to that is. But I do know that a lot of the things that they're doing now, they weren't allowed to do prior to 9/11. They weren't allowed to send infiltrators into these meetings. They weren't allowed to even go to public places and record the names or the descriptions of people who were protesting. But now at almost every protest I go to in the United States, and here in Madison, Wisconsin, there are police there filming. I was involved in a lot of the uprising in against Scott Walker, and there were, the cops were filming everything. Why should the cops be filming when there's no criminal activity going on? But here we have a sense as to just how deep this goes among law enforcement across the country, and how connected they are with the private sector, which is even more distressing.
And is there any, are you aware of any attempts by any legislatures, or is there any investigations into this? When we contrast this with what the supposed IRS scandal, it seems to me completely is completely dwarfed by what we found here.
I totally agree. I think this is of a much bigger scale, a much bigger scandal, a much bigger affront to our political rights than this IRS flap. And yet I don't know anyone who's making a stink about it among Democratic legislators.